Hello there, and welcome to the Gazette Prep Football Podcast, the Prep Football Huddle. This is Jeff Linder, Jeff Johnson in the middle, K.J. Pilcher with Hercules on the far right. It's week 4, boys. If you're Class 2A or smaller, you're halfway through the season after Friday night. So, I guess we might as well just kind of hop in here. Week 3 games. I had a really good one over at Van Horn. Mount Vernon held off Benton Community 15-13. Really good defensive game. Mount Vernon got a big stop there in the waning, the dying moments, and I think it maybe said more about Benton than it did for Mount Vernon. Benton looks like a team that can compete with the big boys, and they look like a playoff team. So, KJ, we'll go over with you for your week 3 report from the game or games that you were at.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a double dip last week where I watched Cedar Rapids, Washington, Davenport West at Kingston on Thursday, and then I went up to Arlington to watch a battle of unbeaten teams, North Linn and Starmont. But Cedar Rapids, Washington got its first win over Davenport West. Pretty dominant performance, I'd say, for the Warriors. They won 36-6, and I was really impressed with what they were able to do. Not a lot of glitz and showboaty stuff. It's just a straight, hand it off and kind of push the scrum forward, run attack. And they were able to be successful. I think JJ, we were talking about this. There's just not a lot of flash there. It's just straightforward, grinded out type of offense. They ran for 301 yards against the Falcons. But like you see this a lot, one part of the game complements the other or opens up. On another part of the game, and when Washington didn't run it, they were pretty effective. Grady McGuire at quarterback only threw 5 passes, but completed 4. For 80% completion there. Only for 57 yards, but one of them was a big play action pass, a touchdown pass in the second quarter right before half to Fidel Tia, 44 yards actually. They really that really was a boost going into halftime, and they controlled the second half. Defensively, they were aggressive and fast, and I believe Wyatt Young had 5 sacks. He really got off the edge. They didn't have anybody that could really keep him out of the backfield. And, they've got – Washington has these playmakers, right? It's just 1 and 2. It came against a team that I believe is still winless. Things get tougher, but I think what you're seeing is kind of the building blocks getting set in place. So – you've got some guys that can do some things. Eric Addy's kind of getting his schemes and, what the style of football that he wants to put out on the field. I think you're seeing that starting to kind of take shape a little bit. So I think there's some positives there from that win. Of course, things get a lot tougher for Washington this week when they play Kennedy. But we'll see what kind of strides they can make. I know they were pretty happy with that win last Thursday. We'll see how they go going forward. The big game
Friday, you were up at Arlington, and I guess you could say when it comes to North Linn and Starmont, North Linn now has a half dozen donuts.
Oh my!
That's amazing.
With
really
Can you guys think of a streak like that?
no,
Against anybody really.
Yeah.
And football is so crazy because so many things could just affect not necessarily the outcome, but a score. You could just have an error, miscommunication that can lead to a turnover and points, a bad snap. Just so many things that could lead to points for the other team, and that North Linn's avoided that. And I tell you what, North Linn really played well. Now, Starmont's having some injury issues. Keaton Moeller, he was on crutches. He's done for the year with Starmont. Injury from week 1. Avery Vasky, one of their other standout offensive and defensive players, got hurt in the first half and didn't return. But North Linn played a heck of a game up there. Like you said, 6 straight shutouts. That's 24 quarters without giving up a point to the Stars, and 10 straight wins in the series. So pretty impressive. And it didn't take much. I mean, Starmont really battled despite those injuries and losses with starters. They battled to the end. They still kind of had a chance in the fourth, but I tell you, Cole Griffith really made some big plays. Will Sommerfeld, their quarterback, showed that he can connect as well. 2 key scores came like at the end of the second quarter and near the end of the fourth quarter. North Linn earlier in the game had gotten really good field position. I think took over at the Starmont 24 and threw 4 straight incomplete passes. Will Sommerfeld just couldn't place it. Had Griffith wide open. Just what they weren't able to connect, overthrew him a couple times. But towards the end of the second quarter, they marched down the field, and I think from the 34-yard line, I think it was 3rd and long, they went right back to it. And that's kind of interesting with the fact that, you ask, hey, he missed those throws, and then we still had faith in Will. He was going to learn from his mistake, and he put a dime right on Cole Griffith. We're kind of running a little bit of a corner post for a touchdown that put him up 6-0. But then big drive, tell you guys, came in the fourth. They went like 80 some yards, melted 5 minutes off the clock, and went up 2 scores with 4 minutes to go. Saw a little Wildcat formation. Cole Griffith took a direct snap, went around left end for the score, and then completed a 2-point conversion, a little pop pass to Cale Benish in the end zone. So 2 really big drives, but I think North Linn kind of really showed that they're going to be a team that could make some noise here this year.
Hey. North Linn enters our Class A Gazette football poll this week at number 9.
I was just going to say it's good to see that Cole Griffith got his athleticism from his mom. So
for sure, without a doubt. And I will say this too, with in regards to Starmont, talking to Mike Augustine after the game, certainly they're not feeling well with Moeller and being out for sure. And at the time, the question mark about Vasky, but he said, hey, we were in this boat last year. And they ran the table. It's going to be a little bit tougher without some key players, but I think they still have what it takes to possibly do what they did a year ago. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think the some of those other teams in that district, East Buchanan isn't what it was last year. Maquoketa Valley, I still think is pretty good. Probably top 15 team. And so when they play Starmont, I think that'll be a really good game whenever that may be. So I would say at the very least, Starmont's a top 3 team in that district. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah, I think you have the bottom of that district is, I think, pretty established. A couple of teams that are really struggling and have struggled. And so, yeah, right. It's getting the playoffs and anything can happen.
Yeah.
Although you might want to stay away from West Hancock and St. Ansgar again this season.
Yeah.
Unlike last season.
JJ, you were at Kingston Friday for Linn-Mar and Kennedy.
Yes.
Now Linn-Mar, like North Linn, Linn-Mar's 3-0.
Yeah, and 21-7 win over Kennedy, and Dylan Lazinski is a good football player. By the way, his dad said to tell you hello, Chad, old teammate of KJ's, if you didn't know.
Yeah, we go way back to the Metro Youth football days.
Awesome.
We were actually in the backfield.
Really?
So Dylan, Chad was we were both running backs back then until we became linemen in high school. So,
but yeah, Dylan, Chad's son he's a heck of a football player, and I'm trying to remember who he kind of reminds me of watching him run. Because he's got great feet, and he can run away from you. It's not very big. I don't know. I'd say a very, very poor man's Tim Dwight, which is still saying something.
I was wondering if he resembled like a Jer Garman. And by the way, you were talking.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I forgot about Jer. That's a very good comparison, KJ. So,
okay.
I mean, they own the line of scrimmage, and he popped off some long runs, and I had him for 272 yardage on the ground, and I looked at the official stats on Bound, and Linn-Mar had him for 280. So go with 280 yards rushing, certainly. And Linn-Mar's defense was good. Kennedy, Jeff, I mean, you saw Kennedy the week before, right? It just
there's
missing. I don't know.
There's some good talent there, but they're just not putting it together. And
I agree.
I don't know why. I don't have a great football mind, but boy, they better figure it out now because if they don't beat Wash and they go to 0-4, they're in a lot of trouble. I know they're taking the route. They're talking about what Valley did last year. They started 0-5 and got to the state semis, but this isn't 2023 Valley. And I don't know if I'm not convinced that 4-5 would get Kennedy into the playoffs anyway.
Really?
So yeah, but you're right. I mean, and I think there's some frustration there, obviously, but it's just they make mistakes that have a good drive going, then there's a fumble or there's a penalty or something like that. And, they play good defense maybe for a couple downs, and then all of a sudden there's a big play against them.
Yeah.
Things like that. So you're right, Jeff. I mean, Kennedy's got to figure it out soon. And, Linn-Mar and Bettendorf this week. And that's down in the Quad Cities. So,
and I guess with that, there's a lot of really, really good 5A matchups this week.
Hey, can I ask you guys one thing really quick before we move on? Jeff, I know you were really high on Linn-Mar at the start of this season. JJ, I think you were as well. With what they kind of went through, the season they were coming off last year, what made you guys really kind of focus in on the potential that Linn-Mar has? Because through 3 weeks, they've really kind of shown exactly what you guys thought of them. I mean, they've been probably one of our best teams overall in the area.
I think just the number of bodies they've got coming back. You looked at the defense, all those guys. You look, just perusing Varsity Bound, and for the improvement that they should have made from sophomore to junior or junior to senior, it looks like they have. I think the 2-coach thing has worked out well. Of course, we didn't know that it would preseason, but I guess they just looked like a team that was ready to take a big jump, whether they were healthy last year or not. And they've lived up to it so far. Their first 2 opponents weren't great. I still think Kennedy's got a quality team, and that was, even though it was quote unquote only a 2-touchdown game against a team that's 0-3, I still think that's a good win. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to know a lot more about Linn-Mar after the next 2 weeks. They've got Bettendorf at Tuval over on the river, and then they've got Cedar Falls at home. And if they can at least split those 2 games, I think that they can go on and have a really successful year, a 7-2 kind of year, and which would get them a home playoff game probably. That's just kind of how I saw it. JJ, do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I hate to harp on Dylan Buzinski again, but I mean he went down with a high ankle sprain in the 3rd game last year, and that was huge because the one thing about Linn-Mar, I guess, watching them, was the passing game maybe might need to have to step up here later as the season goes on, and as defenses obviously try and stop the running game and Muzinski. Can that happen? Sure. I mean, they have some talented guys, out wide, but that was the thing. Like you said, they lost so many guys last year during the season, injuries, and a lot of them were coming back, and the biggest question mark was the coaching situation, and that's worked out great. Coach Martins and Coach Tompkins have done a great job. It's funny, Jeff and KJ, they both come out of the locker room Friday night at the same time, and it's like, well, who wants to talk? And I think it was Chad Tompkins was like, well, I talk defense, he talks offense, and I'm like, all right, I'll talk to you both then. But that's well defined, and that's great, and they were coaches for these kids. They have been before, and it seems like it's been a fairly seamless transition, I guess, that way. So
I think that if there's a 5A team in the area that deserves a game ball from week 3, it's got to be Prairie, doesn't it?
Huge
win over Southeast Polk that, quite frankly, I did not see coming at all.
Right.
And that kind of changes the whole narrative with Prairie, I think. Where do they stand in this this pecking order? These tiers among the 5A teams, because if you beat Southeast Polk, you've done something. I don't know if the Rams are a little bit down. I'm guessing not. We'll find out a lot more about them this week because they play Ankeny Centennial, which is our new number 1 team in that revolving door that we call Class 5A. So,
yeah.
I don't know if you guys know a little bit more about that outcome last week that happened out at John Wall, but that was an eye opener.
Yeah, KJ, you talked about Washington being physical and tough, and that's kind of the identity it wants to have. I think Prairie was the same way, and just reading and hearing about the game was that they just out-toughed Southeast Polk. And, that 30-20 was the result. And the thing with Prairie to me is it's a very young team, and it has a lot. I mean, you watch for Prairie here in the next couple of years and this season, obviously now, because they've been talking about, I think it's a sophomore class for a long time over there, and not a lot of those kids are playing varsity yet, but and they're playing a lot of juniors this year. So Huge. Now, how do you respond after this? I guess that would be my biggest question, right?
Yeah, and they're going to have to respond. I mean, they can't be a one-hit wonder because they go Pleasant Valley, Iowa City, Liberty, Ankeny the next 3 weeks. So, yeah, they've got to stay at that high level if they're going to be, somebody we're talking about come late October.
I also want to point out too that this wasn't a fluky win either. If you go, you can go to the Gazette.com for those watching. Read Mike Condon's gamer from that game Friday. Prairie got out to a 14-0 lead. Southeast Polk came back, tied it before half, I believe. But in the second half, Prairie took the lead, and I don't think they ever trailed in the ball game. And they did that. B.J. Bush Jr., he rushed for 111 yards and a touchdown, but I think he had cramping or some type of injury. And the second half, Quentin Alexander stepped in. So they really didn't even have necessarily their top skill players on the field the whole second half, and Quentin Alexander stepped in. He rushed 8 times for 90 yards and 2 TDs. So Prairie rushed for 220 yards against the Southeast Polk team. That also tells me they might be pretty solid up front. Give the Hogs a little love there as well. But this wasn't a fluky win, that's for sure. That was something they earned. And like you said, now it's a matter of consistency. Can you do this week in and week out? And they'll find out right away this week.
Yeah. Just kind of looking through the other scores Metro-wise last week. We touched a little bit, I think, on Jefferson. They're 3-0. They beat Des Moines North 53-6. Iowa City Liberty suffered a 42-28 loss to Pleasant Valley, so that's the Bolts' first loss of the season. City High got its first win of the season, 53-14 over Ames. Iowa City West beat Muscatine 56-20, and that sets up a big contest for the Battle of the Boot this week. So,
what's the over/under in that game? Points scored.
142.
There you go. I might take.
I think it's going to take 35 or 40 to win it. I don't think that's asking too much. Do you?
No, and both the teams are going to throw a lot, as we know. That could be hand cramp as you try to keep stats for that game.
Yeah. So also Xavier suffers its first loss of the season, 21-17 at Western Dubuque, and Marion blows a 3-touchdown lead and loses 24-21 to Center Point Urbana. So,
and the Xavier loss, I'd have to think in part was because of emerging sophomore quarterback Cash Parks being out with after automobile accident. I guess that's just common knowledge at this point, so I don't have any problems throwing that out there. Just hope he's all right, and the football is second in situations like this, but hopefully he can recover and come back. So,
do you have any idea how long he might be out?
I do not. I heard he had some or lost some front teeth, which doesn't prevent you from playing football, obviously. But I really don't know. I guess that's something we'll find out as we go along. Because Xavier's got a really tough game Friday night against Pella.
Yeah, Pella coming off a huge win against Indianola, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so Pella looks really, really strong right now. They've been impressive, so that's going to be a tough one if Xavier's not at full strength. Even though, they were leading up until the last couple minutes or so against Western Dubuque and gave up a late touchdown. But we'll see. I think Pella's starting to kind of show some of its old form. In that mid to late teens, those teams that they had. And they had some good battles with Xavier too at the Unidome and everything. I think they're starting to look a little more like that version of a Pella team.
Yeah. And on the other side, Western Dubuque has a really tough game this week as well. They have to go down to Eldridge to play North Scott. So that'll be, they're going to have to bounce back really quick and have their heads ready to go again. Kind of an interesting game I'm looking forward to. Friday is kind of a 3A, 4A game between Decorah and Independence. I think that's going to be one of the better area games around. Mount Vernon at Solon's going to be fun, obviously, as it always is. Just kind of looking to see what else is going on in the area. Anamosa's moved into the Gazette rankings at 3-0. They play at Monticello. I think Wilton at Beckman will be a good game. Regina keeps rolling along in 1A. They're 3-0. They go to Durant. They shouldn't have too much problem there. We haven't talked a whole lot about Lisbon. Their schedule hasn't been very strong early. They should roll again this week at Highland. They're 3-0. You guys heard much about the Lions?
Good athletes.
Speed.
Yes, very, very fast team. And like you said, Jeff, it was kind of like last year too. They kind of flew under the radar for a team that.
Yeah.
Did they finish undefeated in the regular season or lose?
I think they did. I think they were 9-0, and I think they got beat right away. I think North Linn or East Buchanan went down there. I think North Linn went down there in the first round of playoffs and won a slugfest. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually was there. That was a good first round game. Lisbon played a better second half and won that first round game. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's that district, quite frankly, isn't the toughest, and but you got to take care of business, right? The old cliche.
Yeah.
You still got to win games and play well. So
yeah, and down the road they've got a showdown with Pekin, and Pekin's just obliterated everybody they've played so far. So.
Mm-hmm.
8-player, kind of an interesting game coming up. I think we're gonna learn a lot more about Lansing Key. They're 3-0. They go to Don Bosco. No, they host Don Bosco Friday up at Lansing. So, anything else you guys want to touch on about football last week or this week?
Well, I just wanted to point out a couple quick things with Lisbon. Through 3 games, they have 23 tackles for loss. And I know the rush game probably gets the most attention because they've rushed for 714 yards and 11 touchdowns already. Tiernan Boots has about 2/3 of that with 556 yards and 9 touchdowns through the 3 games. But the defense, 23 tackles for loss and 8 turnovers forced in those first 3 games. So I think that says a lot about Lisbon's success as well. And then I know it's not a surprise at all with 8-player athletes leading like the touchdown list. But if you look at the current leaders right now, the Gazette area has representatives in the top 5 slots for touchdowns scored this season. Obviously, Bo Burns, a huge start. He has 26 touchdowns through 4 games. Nolan Kriegel, those two faced off against each other in week 0 and combined for 19 touchdowns. That just is insane, regardless of 8-player, 11 player. But he's at 25. You mentioned Mutterman, the big game that Lansing has. He has 21 touchdowns. And then Edco's Price Rochford has 20 touchdowns for the Vikings. And then Central City's Matthew Klosterman is 5th with 16. So I know there's an extra game there. It's 8 players, more conducive to high scoring. Great. But to have 5 area kids in those top 5 spots, I think is impressive.
Agree.
Now,
all right. Well, KJ, we're going to stick with you here for a minute, KJ.
Okay.
So you're our golf guy, and you do such a good job with that. As far as the high school golf is concerned, tell us a little bit about what you saw earlier this week.
So Tuesday, they held the Crandick Golf Tournament. People don't know, golf has a handful of big tournaments. The Crandick being one of them, in addition to the MVC Super Meet and the divisionals. The Linn-Mar and Warrior Invitationals are pretty big meets as well. But the Crandick is one of the annual events. Cedar Rapids and Iowa City teams come together. And I was held at Hunter's Ridge on Tuesday, and it came down to a pretty interesting finish. Something you don't see very often, because a lot of times they use tiebreakers like a card back, where you go back to the toughest hole and to see who scored better. And if it's still tied, you go to the next toughest hole, see who scored better, and use that for criteria, or they just name co-medalists. Apparently in the Crandick bylaws, medalist honors are determined by a playoff. So we got a sudden victory playoff between Linn-Mar's Christian Cloyd and Xavier's Logan Odding. They both shot 1 under 71 on Hunter's Ridge, which that's dang good out there. They both parred the first hole, and then Christian Cloyd was able to par the par 5 number 2 and edge Odding by a stroke. But it was a really neat situation. Once it was announced, there were carts, and there were other golfers, there were coaches, spectators, and family members that kind of followed. So they actually really did have a little bit of a gallery following them around on that playoff. A really neat little deal that Cloyd was able to come out on top. But something you don't see in the regular season very often, and it was just kind of a neat deal. And if you add in the fact that before the match, these two are, Odding and Cloyd, really good friends. They've grown up golfing together. It was interesting. Cloyd had a playoff in like a youth amateur tournament, and Odding was his caddy for that playoff. And before them, they were on the driving range talking smack to one another, and then they end up finishing the day in the playoff, battling out for medalist honors. Just a really, really neat situation and competition Tuesday at Hunter's Ridge.
Great.
Now, speaking of super competitions, you were treated to probably one of the most unique events I think the area's had.
Yeah, I was up at Manchester last night, and West Delaware and Mount Vernon, two of the, our area crown jewels for volleyball, went head to head in an outdoor match. We couldn't have gotten luckier weather-wise. I think it was 76 degrees and just a slight breeze out of the south when we had first serve at 7:05 or whatever it was, and it was great. It was really a neat event. We were estimating the crowd at just a little shy of 2,000. Probably wow. 1,800 people were there. You guys have both been to the football field at Manchester, and that's a pretty big bleachers section there on the west side, and couldn't hold them all. Really? The overflow had to go over to the visitor side, and boy, I'll tell you, I think a lot of people thought that Mount Vernon was going to handle them, and it was going to be quick 3 and out. But West Delaware won the first 2. They were up 22-18 in the third, and Mount Vernon wiggled off the hook and won that third set. And once they did that, the train started moving, and Mount Vernon ended up winning the thing in 5. And it was a really neat night. You've got to give both coaches a lot of credit for, being willing to do this, and just a ton of credit to Matt Weiss, athletic director at West Delaware, for doing all the legwork. It was a lot of work by a lot of people, a lot of businesses up there. 2 furniture stores hauled the court to and from Coralville, where it's been in storage.
Cool.
Delhi Lumber provided 166 sheets of plywood for the court to lie on between the new artificial turf at Brownfield and the court. So it was a great night. I don't think I heard anybody say that it was anything less than amazing.
Now,
and the weather cooperated.
And the weather was great.
Now, did they set it up right at midfield?
Yep, the court was actually the net was on the 50-yard line. It was probably a third of the way closer to the home stands than the visiting stands. They probably could have moved it up even a little bit closer and hugged the sideline of the football field a little bit more. But I think the people that were in the stands got a good vantage point. They've got new lighting at West Delaware. At least I don't think they had it last year. Maybe they did, but now they've got that goofy fun lighting that changes colors and turns on and off and does all that stuff. So they did that between games. So just a lot of fun. And, you want to say, oh, I hope this becomes a trend, but I kind of hope it doesn't, just because, the novelty of this. And it was just a very memorable night for everybody that was involved.
How many ball retrievers do they have?
That's a great
fight goes awry, or
I'll tell you, they had kids chasing balls all over the place during warmups. Once the match was going, they probably had 3 or 4. They had a lot of towel girls because it was just humid enough that they had to wipe that thing off after anybody dove for a ball or whatever. So they had towels. They had fans going during the match. So just a lot of people were there. 2 people from the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union, including Aaron Gerlich, who KJ through your wrestling, were there, and I think they were very impressed. And again, it was a night that the kids will never forget. It'll stay in my memory bank for as long as I've got marbles running around up there. So it was really a fun night, and it's about all you can say about it.
Okay, not to extend this too much longer, but talking about this volleyball match in a football stadium, we've seen City High and Liberty play at Kinnick Stadium.
Yeah.
I know they've had, wrestling matches and stuff held in like theater auditoriums, right up on stage, just to change things up. If you could have an event on any type of stage, what event would it be and where would it be?
You mentioned the wrestling. Wouldn't it be fun to have a high school wrestling match at the Paramount?
That would be kind of cool.
Or Theater Cedar Rapids or something like that with the way they can do lighting there. That'd be fun.
With Independence, they with their big Cliff Keen tournament, their gym, as big as it is, still needed 2 more mats. So they used the stage in the auditorium there, and it's kind of different sitting in a theater seat, watching things up there on the stage. It's pretty cool, and that wouldn't be bad for a wrestling duel.
Yeah. What would you think of the Paramount?
I like it. I love the Paramount. Go there for performances a lot, and that old traditional vibe and stuff, and a big giant stage. I think that would be pretty cool. I think it'd be pretty neat in the loge watching two teams scrap. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
What
All
about,
right. So week 4, I will be at North Liberty. I've got what I think will be a really interesting game between Cedar Falls and Iowa City Liberty. Where will you guys be? I think JJ's got Thursday, Friday duty.
Yeah, Jefferson. I think it's homecoming this week. I think that's right. For Jefferson, they play it plays Thursday night against Des Moines East. Should be pretty heavily favored. Against the Scarlet. Sorry, wrong school in Des Moines. Maroons is Dowling. Scarlet is East. Got it. And then Friday, Prairie and Pleasant Valley, a game that we've talked about. Hopefully there's not a letdown for Prairie after such a big win, because it'll have to get right back up and get after it against a really good Pleasant Valley team. That's always tough to prepare for with the option offense. So, KJ,
first off, do you guys know the Thursday night connection between the Gazette, Jefferson, and Des Moines East?
Natalie Niemeyer,
the Natalie Niemeyer Bowl.
Hi, Natalie.
Former Jayhawk, believe Des Moines East teacher, correct?
Yeah, really good. As far as the newspaper and the yearbook, she's been out there. She's been out there a while now, 10 years or more. I think this might be year 14 for her. And
wow.
Yeah. So I know she really likes it out there, and I'm sure she's just a fantastic teacher.
I bet she is.
And a former Gazette staff member as well.
That's right.
So, huge connection there at Kingston. I know she's come over to the eastern side of the state to watch her nephew pitch. I wouldn't doubt if you saw her at Thursday night game in their old stomping grounds. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm going to be at Solon on Friday for a huge rivalry game between Mount Vernon and Solon. Really excited for this. Two really, really good teams. What do we have them at 1 and 3?
1 and 3. Mount Vernon's tied for third this week. Yeah.
Okay. Solon won the game 37-20 last year, but Mount Vernon had kind of halted a long losing streak in the rivalry by winning both games in 2022. So we'll see if Solon can extend the streak or if Mount Vernon can get back on there. I'm sure there'll be a few tire irons in the stands for this one. And I'm kidding. Please, nobody bring tire irons and get rowdy. But anyway, Eddie Johnson stepped in as a leader rushing the ball for Solon. He's at 460 yards and 7 touchdowns. Ty Bell doing a really good job at quarterback for the Spartans as well. You've got Kellen Haverback that's stepped in under center for the Mustangs, leading the charge there, and Cooper Hurd, their leading rusher. Jace Jaspers, 286 yards receiving and a touchdown.
A few other games of interest that we're covering. Ryan Plagenkuhl will be at the Battle of the Boot at Iowa City West when they play City High. Mike Condon will be at Kingston for Kennedy Wash. Douglas Miles will be at Xavier for Pella Xavier. So, and I think that's it for what we've got covered, plus all the other correspondence that help us out with phone calls all fall along. So, all right. Well, for KJ, for JJ, for Hercules, this is Jeff Linder signing off, and we'll see you next week.